morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Spa Sisters podcast with Julie Wren and myself, Carly Chamberlain. Just a reminder as to why we're here. We are here to engage, disrupt, and transform the therapist experience. We are passionate about therapist well-being, welfare, and want to inspire you to be a better therapist. This is why we have wonderful guests on our show. Like today, we have Emma Holly, and it's been quite a mission to get Emma Holly on our podcast. It's taken some time, which is just a testament to how dedicated Emma is to her own work and her own business. Before we start, just remember to subscribe, like, and comment on our channels at Spa Sisters Podcast. And if you want to contact us, please do at spasisterspodcast@gmail.com. So let's get started. Emma, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you that are watching or listening and don't know who Emma is, this is a perfect opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into Emma's background and her work. So thank you for joining us today, Emma.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to be invited to be on the podcast. So really appreciate that. Yeah, great to be here.
So really curious.
Want to start?
Yeah, I know. I'm so curious to we tend to do this quite a lot with our guests because I just want to sort of gauge like your background, where it all began for you. You are a therapist, you're an educator, and you specialize in scar therapy, or how would you say it? What would you call it?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah. So I'm this is my 32nd year as a therapist. So I trained in massage very early on back in the 90s, and have always been passionate about the benefit of touch. And it's such a great thing that you can do around having a family, and it seemed to kind of like work well with me for many years. But I think having done fairly standard kind of remedial and holistic massages for a very long time, I found that I had got a little bit not quite out of love, but I was feeling like I wanted to do something a bit different, and I was looking forward with my career and thinking about longevity of my hands, and kind of where I wanted to go. And I stumbled on a course to work with scars, which I went into very blindly, not particularly knowing that that was an area of interest. I just thought, oh, that sounds different. I've never heard of that. And it was very different at the time. It was the only second course that had been run of its type in the UK. And that was back in 2015. So almost 10 years ago. And it really was very transformative for me. Having not had a very big experience of ever having a surgery or a traumatic injury, I didn't really appreciate quite the impact on a physical but also emotional level that scarring can have, and quite how quickly scars can respond compared to normal soft tissue treatment. And I just felt there was such a huge audience of people who were looking or who would benefit from this type of treatment, and it just was unheard of when I first qualified. And I quickly got asked to be a teacher, and so I've been teaching since 2017 and very passionate about taking this out into make sure that the people who need it get to hear about it. So I've done quite a lot of pioneering to get the NHS to do training, places like Macmillan, to say that this is something that people can train in as long as they're already a therapist. And it's been going wonderfully, and it's in a really great place right now. So and I launched my own courses after lockdown. So I started off doing somebody else's kind of training, and now I do my own materials.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a great story you have to tell. So I'm really interested in diving deeper into the scar tissue therapy and the potential things or feelings or outcomes that it can produce, not only from a physically healing perspective, but obviously an emotional release. And how do you cope with guiding your clients through that after they've had treatments with you?
Yeah, I mean, I found it. I mean, I've always found touch can allow a different dialogue around kind of where people have got pain and trauma. I think that's one of the things we fall in love with as a therapist is being able to make somebody feel good about themselves and being able to make them feel maybe better connected with that bit of their body. You know, most of us have got clients who are all far too busy and rushing around and they, don't have the time for the self-care that we all know in an ideal world we'd be doing. And so when what I discovered, which I hadn't really been aware of through my sort of anatomy and physiology training that I did all those years ago, but it's still not a core part of any curriculum, any standard curriculum, is to understand that when you have an injury that leaves a scar, there is a physiological change to that tissue, which makes it less effective. So you don't get hair follicles in scars, you don't get your sebaceous glands. So if you've got a really big scar, that can make a difference because it can be dry, it can be irritated, it loses sensation, you can have nerve damage. Physically, it's less stretchy. So you can, if one bit of your body is not stretching and moving very well, we all know what happens is that the bit of your body that can move then tends to overcompensate. And if you've got people with smaller injuries, that doesn't necessarily make a big impact. But over the years, you might start off with somebody who had a little injury in their foot or their knee, and then maybe they end up having a keyhole procedure. And then it'll be that same person on probably that same side of the body that they end up with a total knee replacement or a hip replacement later on down the line, or perhaps a back surgery because they're tilting and therefore compensating in their spine for lack of movement in their leg. And you really can see that how what starts off as something small cascades into bigger things. So
Mm,
even, in this country, it was sitting around 1 in 4 women were giving birth by C-section. That's gone up to nearly 1 in 3. There's been some recent changes with regard to use of gas and air being more limited in many hospitals, and that means much more births are being managed. That means much
right.
more births are ending up with cesarean. And it's a major surgery, and you don't really get a recovery time. You've got to go home and pick up a baby. And if you have an abdominal surgery, you don't normally go home with something that potentially weighs, 10 pounds and that you're lifting up and down multiple times a day and bending and twisting. It's not ideal. So that compromises the way that that scar tissue heals. So from everything from, something very common, but also very large, like a C-section, to orthopedic surgeries, we've got oncology surgeries, we've got little injuries, lacerations, burns. All of these things leave scars.
Mm,
Um, and by coming on with massage techniques, you can help soften and mobilize the tissue. And then, like you say, you can help people feel okay about it being touched. So that can also be quite powerful emotionally, with somebody sort of saying, I often have clients saying, "Oh, I don't let anybody touch that." And then you start saying, "Okay, well, how do you feel about putting a bit of cream on? And how do you feel, giving that bit of your body a bit of attention?" And you help walk them through that journey of kind of acceptance. And it's amazing. I just love it.
mm.
It's been
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. And there are so many different ways you can use it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
love
what
it.
I'm picking up on is sort of the power of the conscious awareness of the scar, because when you get injured or have a scar from a surgery, you sort of almost like put it over here, don't you?
Yeah.
And you let it be just doing its thing, because it's really hard to sort of look at it and accept it and see it as an imperfection that you think it's caused people pain. So why would you want to face your pain? It's like a reminder of your pain every day. So how do you open the doors to people that obviously I would imagine you're the type of person that you want everyone with a scar, you want them to experience this therapy, right?
Oh,
Because
totally. Yeah.
I've had a little bit of scar tissue therapy myself, and I know the incredible benefits that can come from you for you as well as a person, and from an energetic point of view as well. But what if you have someone who just would not even consider this as an option? How do you access those people and make that a really welcoming option for people that might be really suffering but just don't even know that this is an option? Is that through your training programs and your kind of
Yeah, I mean, I think What I
business.
hear a lot of is I'd never why hadn't I heard of this? How did I not know about it? I think with anything, it's really important to let people come to it in their own time, because in unraveling some of those uncomfy feelings, there could be some, re-experiencing of a traumatic incident, which it's important that you're not forcing somebody to do, that you're inviting them, would they like to try it? And
Mm.
very much, yeah, when I'm sort of educating, I talk about, oh, well, would you, why don't you say to clients, would you like us just to try this for 10 or 15 minutes within your normal massage session? And then you can say if you like it or not. And it was one thing for me, it was a really big eye opener. I did a lot of campaigning to go and work with the Invictus athletes. And we were set up, myself and 3 colleagues, and we had a little kind of like canopy on the edge of the track, and they were doing some like training for the very, very early bits of trying to get in to be in the Invictus team. And these athletes were coming up to us, and they had half their arm missing and no legs, and they were going, oh, can you massage my back, even though we had a massive sign saying that we were working with scar tissue. And you kind of think, oh, so you had to be very careful with that conversation to say, well, how do you feel if we massage your stump? Like, would that be okay? And yes, we will give you a back massage, but would you like to try it? And you kind of think, well, they've got such severe scar,
Yeah.
and they were coming over to us with that sign up, and yet there was a tentativeness to say, yes, I'd like to try this. But the minute one person tries it, they then call over to their friends and say, oh, come and have a go of what's going on over here. And I
Wow.
think that acceptance of different people talking about it within their circles, particularly if it's like a type of injury. So we recently did some work with the Burns Foundation, and they've got a private forum, and they were very nervous about having some scar therapy because they thought it might be painful, because their early rehab in physio had been very painful scar techniques. And once one of them did it, they then reported back to the forum, and we then had an influx of people, because we have a pledge to offer free treatment every time we treat. We're doing courses, and so we've now had an influx of burn patients accessing those free treatments. And some of them, these are really historic burns from 20, 30 years ago, and other people have been burnt in the last couple of years, but they're sort of now coming out and feeling more confident that it's okay, because somebody who's had the same thing has told them it's okay.
Okay, that is fantastic information that you're sharing with us. Thank you so much. This is really opening my eyes. Julie, I'm sure you're buzzing with
Yeah,
questions.
I am indeed. I mean, it comes back to that idea of awareness raising as well. I mean, are your SCAR trained therapists actually being getting referrals from the NHS? In doctor surgeries, is there like a way that they can create this link to say, look, here we are, this is what we do?
It's very hard. The NHS is normally limited that it shouldn't refer into private practice, but I have had doctors who have got websites up and sort of said, oh, you might want to look at this. I'm very excited. I'm talking at a surgical conference to breast surgeons about scar massage in May, which is a huge breakthrough. It's taken a very long time to get there. And before that, I've spoken at conferences, but it's been more like physio conferences and therapy conferences for different associations. So the difference of opening up a door within our health service is quite big, and certainly lots of charities. I've done lots of work with cancer charities, for example, and they're now offering it as a standard part of the service, which means that they've got leaflets in the waiting areas. And I think we need those kind of primary care workers to understand that this is a thing, in order for people to understand what they need to do, even from the very simple parts of, actually, there is a different kind of skincare regime that needs to be looked after if you've got a scar. And not everyone's even told about how they can look after their skin to try and minimize scarring. And so that's a part of the course as well, is, what is ideal skincare to make your scar as cosmetically good as it's possible to be, given that it is always going to be a scar. We don't get rid of scars, but we might be able to make them less red. We might be able to stop them growing into big keloid scars, which are the very large kind of masses of scars. But it's a lot easier to do that preventatively rather than to wait until there's a problem. And I'm just launching a directory site, which will also be a kind of like patient information point, which will be able to help people find a therapist, but also get some basic information on, you know, what should they be doing, what steps should they be taking. So all of these things will hopefully help.
Fabulous. So this restore method that you've created and that you're teaching others, I mean, there seems to be a lot in there, but is there also something for the therapists themselves to be able to actually then deal with the emotional release? So do you teach them how to deal with the emotional release of their clients? Because that can be something quite, I mean, I know in our sort of, when we teach therapists massage as well, we always have to sort of say to them, you know, beware of the release of the emotions, because it can, you know, we know that touch therapy does that. So how do you prepare your trainees, if you like, to be able to deal with those situations?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, and it's something, you know, I've got to be careful to teach within my expertise, and I'm not a counsellor or a psychotherapist, though I have done kind of like very basic courses in that myself, just to be able to understand it more. So I wouldn't ever claim to be teaching them, you know, those kind of skills at a very high level. But what I do talk about is the importance of grounding before you start, about not taking on people's problems, about the really, really important thing about signposting, particularly if you're working with a certain kind of group of people, make sure that you know what's around for them. So if you're working with people who've been through a birth trauma, where can you signpost them? What are those routes? What are they going to be? How can they do like a birth debrief? What's accessible to them via the NHS? And when should they go back to their medical health professional? Signs for PTSD and so on, you know, and how to deal with chronic pain. And certainly I've got a really in-depth online course which covers all of that in masses of details, including interviews with like some leading experts in chronic pain for how we talk about pain and what pain means, because those are the kind of things you can come across if you're working with people who've had injuries. And it's really important that we are honest about what the service is that we're providing. And I think it would be inappropriate for a therapist to feel that they are then becoming a counsellor, because those are very specific skill sets, and you could be working with someone who's been through a very traumatic incident. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that we know where our boundaries lie, I think is actually quite important. So I'm really clear about that. But looking after yourself and coming back to the group, we've got a lovely supportive group where people can come and talk about what's going on with their clients.
Very wonderful. So talking about that group of therapists then, so I mean, who do you see coming through your doors to want to learn this technique? I mean, are we talking just massage therapists, holistic therapists, spa therapists, nurses, physios? You know, who's being attracted to this?
It's really changed over the years. I mean, I think particularly because my initial kind of exposure was through like the Sports Massage Association and the Federation of Holistic Therapists. Those were the first times that I was kind of invited to speak at conferences. In my early days of training, it was very much massage therapist dominant. And as the years have gone on, it's become a little bit more open. So now I have a real mix of physios who work in private practice and who are based in the NHS. I've had some specialist nurses, but not many. I've had a couple of OTs who do hands-on clinical work, both privately and in the NHS. But I'd still say the majority of my clients are massage therapists who are very serious about supporting injury recovery. So they're normally people who've, you know, had quite a few years of training under their belt and they've got quite a bit of experience. I get some specialist sports therapists, so like massage therapists, soft tissue therapists who work within elite sports, might come and do a course because footballers are always getting, you know, injuries and things like that. But a lot of it's around women's health. So a lot of people have gone on to specialise in working with C-sections. A lot of people have gone on to specialise in working with cancer. So I do specific courses to learn more about those things as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And you mentioned earlier about the Invictus Games, but I also see that you work with Help for Heroes. So can you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, so the Help for Heroes, the Invictus obviously is driven through charity funding, and Help for Heroes ran it the year before this one. So it's now passed across again and is sitting under a different charity. And the real shame thing is that every time it changes charity, it means that you've got to kind of start again with trying to establish those relationships to show that, you know, we're able to help. But it's been amazing. They were phenomenal, and they held the largest ever disability event in the UK, and we were there with 6 therapists alongside the physiotherapy team, and we gave that year I think we did about 300 treatments for the athletes, and it was just phenomenal, and people were jumping off the table and going and getting personal bests in their different categories. And because if you give a bit more movement, you know, whether it's throwing the discus or whatever activity it is, it means that they can push themselves a little bit harder and their bodies are capable of absorbing it a bit more. So it was just amazing, a great experience. Wow. Yeah, and I'm now so I tend to pick a charity for a couple of years, make sure that they understand how to get access, and now I've been working with a different burns charity, so that I'm always trying to look of making sure that people within different areas of injury are getting that kind of information about how it can help.
Well, I'm absolutely no wonder that you won an award.
Yeah.
So, you know, in 2023, you won the Inspirational Tutor of the Year Award by Teapot. Can you just tell us a little bit, how has that changed anything for you in terms of your business or your personal life?
Oh, I think it's a lovely award. I'm very proud. And it was really nice because actually I had no idea I'd been nominated, and I still don't know who nominated me. So if they watch this podcast, thank you. Because, you know, I think at the end of the day, I'm a woman in business, and it took me a long time to recognize myself as a woman in business. I just thought I was the therapist who was just having a little potter at this, and being taken seriously within the industry by some amazing, you know, people that I was up against. I was absolutely thrilled to bits to have the privilege of being recognized for doing what I love well, and that's really important to me. So it has been great, and it's lovely to I think there's a lot of competition out there within all industries, and it's nice to be recognized within your industry and to get a little reward, feel that you've done something right. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
Oh, I get the impression, Emma, that you don't get distracted easily, and you've got a very clear goal of where you're heading, and it's fantastic to feel that energy from you, and it just shows your commitment and dedication to your work. How can people get hold of you? What's your website address?
So come on over to restoretherapy.co.uk. That's the main website. I have also got a clinic, but to find out more about the training, that's the place to go. And watch this space. There's definitely lots more things coming, and it's wonderful to be meet you guys and get the news out there even more. So thank you so much for having me.
Great, Emma. Well, take care, and we look forward to watching what you do next.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.